Good morning to you all. Thanks for coming this early, and thank you for the invitation. My topic today is internet lexicography. That's what Simon told me I should do. And since this is a very broad topic, I did some brainstorming to get some ideas on what I could say. And this is just to give you an impression on lots of ideas that I have. And what I'll do is I'll talk about requirements for lexicographers and users, about concepts necessary to realize internet dictionaries, and about research approaches. And what I say is based on my own practical experience as a lexicographer of an online dictionary of German, and also based on lots of discussions in our network, Internet Lexicography. And I'd like to thank all the network members and especially my Mannheim colleagues for all their input. And due to where I come from, many of the examples I show later will be German, but don't worry, it's mostly to give you an impression of the screens and not of the content. And the other dictionaries I show are European dictionaries because I just know those best. The number of dictionaries is so large that actually there is an online bibliography now of internet dictionaries that you might want to use. It has several thousand entries, and it is hosted at our institute. I'm sorry I can't talk about everything or show everything. I won't be able to show very many dictionaries either, but it's just 45 minutes. So let's get started. Let's look at internet lexicography and other disciplines. I think that neither writing or using internet dictionaries happen in a vacuum, but in a historical context with traditional lexicography, we all know, most of us in this room, I would think, know paper dictionaries. And I think very many of our users still know paper dictionaries. But this might change in the future, I'm not sure. Maybe someday there will be people who have never seen or used a paper dictionary. There are other disciplines, of course, who contribute to lexicography, in my opinion, and I think they will continue to do so. Linguistics, philologies in general, information science. And there, of course, are lots of developments in computer linguistics and corpus linguistics, or more generally speaking, language technology, which have shaped internet lexicography. And they have shaped this maybe more than paper dictionaries. And then, of course, the medium itself is important, in my opinion, because it is the place where we publish internet dictionaries, but at the same time, it's a competitor for dictionaries because people will look for information on words, on language, on the web as well. I think it's very important to keep in mind that for internet dictionaries, one thing is not different at all from paper dictionaries, and that is content and presentation and the user or the usage you want to offer are independent. And I think this is especially true because the medium internet allows for an easier contact between dictionaries and their users. So please keep in mind for everything I say later that although in my talk I will cover the content of internet dictionaries, the presentation of the lexicographic information, and I'll look at the user or ways of using dictionaries as my 3 points. In fact, I shouldn't really cover them separately. They always belong to each other. What I'll do is, as I said, I'll look at content first, and there's, of course, a lot to be said about that. I restrict myself to dictionaries which are based on electronic corpora, and are compiled specifically for the online publication. I won't talk about retro-digitized dictionaries or anything else. And the reason for this is that I believe that the innovative potential of internet dictionaries shows itself here very much. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't show itself with other dictionaries. It's just that I had to choose. I think that one shouldn't expect internet dictionaries only to offer innovative ways of presenting the data and to facilitate access to this data, but one should also strive to achieve an improvement of the quality of the content when publishing online. And the question of content, I think, is particularly important when you think of automatically compiled information. And that's why I'd like to look at that a little bit more. And we did hear some things about that yesterday already. So I hope this fits in quite nicely. I know that, of course, there are printed dictionaries as well with automatically compiled information. And in Germany, there's a whole dictionary on collocations. It's a huge paperback dictionary published in De Gruyter, and this was only compiled automatically, for example. But I believe that on the web, because maybe there is more space, there is more experimentations, the limitations of the book fall away. And here I'll focus only on two types of information that we've already heard about, one at last. That's collocations, and the other will be paradigmatic partners. Why do users need collocations? Well, we've heard about that yesterday, so I don't need to get into detail. But I think it's interesting to see that users have an idea too. This is a screenshot out of one of our online surveys, and we asked dictionary users to rate the usefulness of different kinds of information. And on a scale of 1 to 7, they rated collocations on average to be by about 5.7. So they seem to think that collocations are kind of useful. But how do we need to compile this information? How should it be presented online when we think of a general dictionary so that it is really useful for users? And I'll show some slides to you now how dictionaries do this. You don't need to be able to read all the details, just more visual impression. Don't get scared now. This is a very full screen with very much information. This is taken from a dictionary made in Leipzig, Wortschatzlexikon Leipzig. These are collocates for the word conference, and they are compiled automatically and listed according to their statistical significance. There are some on the left side of conference, on the right side, and that's about it. It's just a list according to statistic significance. And then, of course, you can do it quite differently. This is a screenshot from the Algemeen Nederlandswoordenboek from Leiden, and they use the sketch engine to pre-process automatically, and then they work on the data lexicographically, and they give the information according to grammatical or semantical criteria. Here, this is the word componist. They didn't cover conference yet, so had to find another one. And you can see that they give them with adjectives, and then later on the side you'll find collocates, verbal collocates, and so on. So this looks very different, of course, and the same is true when you look at paradigmatic partners, more specifically synonyms. You'll have dictionaries here again, Wortschatzlexikon Leipzig, where the synonyms are extracted automatically. They're just given like that. There is no proof, reading, or anything. This is why you find mistakes. And then, of course, on the other hand, this is a screenshot from our own German online dictionary. We use corpus methods too to extract information on synonyms, then we evaluate them, we put them online, we give a little citation where we show both synonyms in the same context. And of course there are collaboratively compiled thesauri. For example, there's the Open Thesaurus project, for German at least, but I won't cover those. I think there's much here in the conference about collaborative dictionaries. Our test persons in the survey even thought that paradigmatic partners are more useful than collocations. This is the same screen that I showed before. And when we compile it manually, I think it's really useful to be able to give corpus citations. And I found it quite interesting that in the latest issue of the International Journal of Lexicography, it had a special issue on synonymy and sameness of meaning. This was something that people asked for in there. Give contextual and co-textual guidance for the usage of synonymy. So maybe it's useful to give a citation. What are advantages and disadvantages of doing it automatically or lexicographically? And we've heard about that yesterday already. I was quite pleased. Let's look at some pros and cons here. One very important argument all the time is that automatic compilation saves time. It goes far, you can fill your dictionary faster, but is this really true? I'm not so sure about that. If you really want to check manually, of course, this needs time. The advantage for the dictionary user might be, oh, there's more information, let's put more information online, more collocates. But is this really always good? Well, if you present very many collocates in long, unstructured lists, maybe not. And then, of course, there's always this question of quality. Are automatically compiled informations reliable? Are they correct? Are there any mistakes? I know that lexicographers make mistakes too, but maybe less often, hopefully less often. And then on the other side, we don't really know yet how users work with information like that. I don't even know whether users recognize that there is a difference between lexicographically and automatically compiled information. We don't even know, I think, whether they care about that. I know that lexicographers care about the distinction, but maybe users don't care at all. And if somebody could look into that with some studies, I'd be very pleased. Out of our own experience, I would say that most automatically compiled information should be checked manually. And this is why you have to plan for the personnel and the time necessary to do so, at least to check on a random basis. And I think it's also necessary to plan the interaction of both kinds of information carefully, and I think users should be informed. And I'd like to look into this with more usage studies, as I've said, but I don't know really how to set up experiments for this here. And I think there should also be more collaboration still. Maybe in this context, this is not necessary to say so, but in Germany there are still very many lexicographers who are kind of careful when it comes to work with corpus methods, let's put it that way. I think lexicographers should be well informed on the developments in corpus and language technology so that they can better assess if it's a risk to employ these methods or not. And then, of course, corpus linguists, on the other hand, should maybe attune better to us lexicographers. I think we wouldn't be satisfied with 94% precision. We'd aim at 100% precision if possible. There are also ways to bring dictionary and corpora closer together, and some of you have mentioned this yesterday already. There are different ways of doing this. You can have corpus citations in the dictionary. You can give, if you want to, metadata on the corpus in your dictionary, or you can offer possibility to go directly to a corpus. Let's look at some examples. This is just a screenshot from our own dictionary where we use automatically compiled citations, and I think the quality here is rather good. Now, there are several corpus linguistic methods of choosing good citations, and I think the results are quite convincing. How about corpus metadata? What I mean about is we do something like that in our own dictionary, and I don't know why we do it really, to be honest. We let the user know in how many different sources and from how many years in our corpus the word can be found. And we thought that this would be useful information so that users may estimate how well the word is covered or not. We have no idea if this is really useful. We're just offering it online. But this would be something that we could think about, whether we should do this at all or is this completely useless. I'm not sure. And then, of course, you can have corpus search and dictionary search on one side, and I'd like to show two examples on how to do this. This is a screenshot from the German DWDS dictionary at the Berlin Academy, and what they do is they offer this site. You type into the search box a word. This is conference again, and then you see these different panels. You get panels with dictionary information, and then you have panels with corpus information. And another way to do it is how Annette Klosa does it. Here you have the possibility to access two dictionaries and a corpus, and here are three different search boxes. You need to do three different searches, and then you get results. A more sophisticated way would be to offer corpus evidence only for specific information. And this is another screenshot from the Danish dictionary from Årbok.dk, and I think this is quite a nice way of doing it. For examples, here this is Engelsk Dansk Årbok. I hope the pronunciation is okay. And there's this tiny little button with a K, and when you click on that, you go directly to the corpus, and then only hits for this specific example, Engelsk Dansk Årbok, will show up. And I think this is a very clever way of offering more data to the users. And then, of course, there's also the possibility to show more context for a corpus citation. And I only know one dictionary, really, which does that, and this is a very specific German dictionary. It's a dictionary on historical German and West Germanic legal terms. It's called Deutsches Rechtswörterbuch, and they do it in a kind of clever way, for every citation that they have, almost everyone, they have a facsimile of the source text, and you can hit on the button, and then you get the whole text from which the citation was taken. I don't know any other dictionaries doing it that way, at least for German, but maybe you do. But I know that e-lexicography has demanded this, that users should be able to look at the corpus directly for themselves, at the whole text. Probably in the future of internet lexicography, or hopefully, we will see more and more sophisticated ways of bringing corpora and dictionaries together, and we've heard about that yesterday. Let's look at the presentation of the content. The web design of internet dictionaries varies to a very large extent, and if you think what you've looked up so far, you know how different internet dictionaries really look. There are some which have a very printed look. They look, as if they were taken from the book, mostly older internet dictionaries, maybe from the late 90s. And then you have very modern ones where you have everything. You have hyperlinks and pop-up windows and color. You also have ads. Things are moving on the screen. Sometimes you have a hard time to find where the lexicographic information is. So, and then there's a whole scale. There's everything in between. But there seems to be a certain number of features which almost all internet dictionaries I know offer, and one is a search box. You would think that all internet dictionaries do have a search box somewhere, and most of the dictionaries I know have outer texts, but not all. I only know very few papers really on how to best design internet dictionaries. The web design, I think, that just started to really think about that maybe. And it's also not really well known how you could evaluate the design, the actual design of internet dictionaries. Which criteria could you use for doing this? And usability studies for internet dictionaries have started only lately, I think, unfortunately. So I'd like to look at some features and examples here where there is still development, and I'll be focusing, maybe unfortunately, on dictionaries for large screens. It would be very interesting and useful to look at how you could present the data on small screens, but there is no time for this today, and I'm absolutely not an expert for that because we want a large screen for our own dictionary. So I'll be looking at some elements on dictionary sites. I'll look at the design of dictionary entries and on some ways how you can visualize lexicographic information. Some of the elements I'll be looking at are search fields, lemma lists, outer texts. And I just said that most dictionaries I know do have a search box, and most of the times this is in the upper center of the page when you open the dictionary. This is the first screenshot from Leo.org. This is a bilingual German, other languages portal maybe. And this is a prototypic example for having a search box upper center of the screen. But there are other ways of doing it. One way is of having the search box in the top menu bar. This is a very nice, very specialized Spanish, Danish dictionary on food. So this is bocadillo. I don't know smørrebrød is maybe the Danish equivalent. Is that true? I don't know. And this is just to show there is this top menu bar, there's a search box that you can see at all times. Wherever you are in the dictionary, you always have that little search box. But there are dictionaries actually which do not have a search box. And this is also a very specialized German dictionary. It's German wine terminology. And this is the start screen that you get. And when you look at it, you can't see a search box. But what you see is a lemma list and an alphabetical index. I have to say that this dictionary went online in the late 1990s. They were rather progressive back then. But when you look at it now, you think, well, this way of giving access to users looks like giving access to a printed dictionary. Where's my search box here? And there is a little there is a little search menu. You can click on the word Suche in the upper menu bar, and then you'll have a search box. But not at first, and I find this quite interesting that they never changed this really. It still works this way. Let's look at lemma lists. This dictionary I've just shown does give entry to to users, to the content via the lemma list. This is not the only dictionary on the internet which still has a lemma list, and I looked at some ways of presenting a list of lemmata. This is from Duden.de, from Duden Publishing House, the online site. Again, our word conference. And when you scroll down the whole way, it's a long way to scroll for this word, then you'll find the lemma list on the top bottom of the page, and it's given the words before conference, the words after conference in that little right on the right side. And you really have to scroll quite a long time to get there. So I'm not sure whether anybody ever gets there and uses this. I don't know. We in our own dictionary have a lemma list as well, with many discussions about the usefulness of this or not, and it's always on the left side of the screen, as you can here see here. There are dictionaries which combine search boxes and lemma lists. This is a dictionary of Luxembourgish. I don't know how to pronounce it in English. Luxembourgish, maybe. It's an online dictionary, and you can see that there's a search box, and then right beneath you have the lemma list. And you can scroll through the lemma list, or you can use the search box. And then when you look at OED, again, our word conference, you also see that there is still a lemma list here on the right side, also in combination with a little search box called jump to. There are other ways of using lemma lists. This is from a dictionary of Spanish for learners, an online dictionary. Here, when you type in the first letter of a word into the search box, then the lemma list will appear, and then you can choose one of the words. Maybe this shouldn't count as lemma list. I'm not really sure whether this is a lemma list or just a feature of the search here. Or you can have little alphabetic buttons. This is a screenshot from the Dictionary of Neologisms from our institute, where you can click on one of the little buttons, and then you're only in this alphabetic area, so to say. So there are still very many ways of how dictionaries use the alphabet or the list of lemmata to give access. But of course, there are very many internet dictionaries, they don't do that at all anymore. They will only have search boxes or other search facilities. So as far as I know, but please correct me later, there's no research as yet done on the question whether in online dictionaries we need lemma lists or not, or whether users would like to have lemma lists or not, or where these lemma lists should be on the screen if we would like to offer them. Or I have no idea. If you know anything, anybody who has done something on that, I'd be interested. How about the design of dictionary entries? There are very many different ideas on how to present the data for one headword on the screen. And the main difference, I think, is you can either have dictionaries where all the information is given on one screen, or there are dictionaries where you have the information on separate screens. And I'm not talking about bilingual dictionaries now where you have only the equivalent. So I'm talking about dictionaries with a little bit more information. And if dictionaries offer diverse information, they sometimes tend to sort of portion it, put it into portions. This is the word test from the OED. And sometimes they use little headlines. Here it's pronunciation, forms, and etymology. But interestingly enough, the definition doesn't get a headline here, it just starts. But you can see that the text is segmented, so to say. But other dictionaries present the data book-like. This is from the Swedish Academy Dictionary Online, and you can tell, of course, there are paragraphs, but it still looks a little bit like printed. Then there are dictionaries which do not present all data at once, but you have to open up collapsible spaces. This is from the DWDS dictionary, which offers at first a compact glance, and then you can click on detail, and then you get more information, and you can open or close it. And there is a lot of different ways of doing it technically, and also of terminology. This dictionary uses compact detail. There are others who use show all, hide all, for example. Again, the OED, you can hide all quotations, you can show all quotations. We can also have additional information in little pop-up windows. John showed the thesaurus to us yesterday. So when you click on that, another window opens. And maybe this is because this information comes from a different source. You might want to make a difference between information that comes from your dictionary and additional things. And then maybe the information on a headword could be distributed on panels. This is, again, the DWDS, which uses those little panels for different kinds of information. Yeah? There's corpus evidence, there are dictionary entries. I don't know any dictionary which uses a presentation like that, for example, to have in one panel the definition, in another panel the quotations, in the next panel paradigmatic information. I've never seen one of those, but this might be possible to do, I think. And then, of course, you can do it like we do it, and I'm not sure we did it very cleverly, to be honest. We show all the information distributed on different screens. And this is just to give an impression how it looks like. You actually have to click quite a lot to get different kinds of information. On the first screen for a word in our dictionary, you get only sort of a survey. You have spelling information, and then you have all the senses, and then you click on one of the senses, and then you see the definition, and then you have these little tabs, and you click through those, and you can see the grammar or the collocates or whatever. So it's more a horizontal way of presenting the information than vertically. And we decided that this would be a good way of doing it because the advantage is that you only have a little information on each screen. You don't need to scroll as much as you do when you do it vertically. But since no other dictionary has ever done that, I don't know whether this was such a good idea. I only know really dictionaries who do it vertically. And maybe we should rethink what we did. I don't know. What about multimedia? I know that this is something that people tend to say, oh yeah, internet dictionaries, they have to have multimedia. That's where you can do it, and actually very many of them do so. You have sound. This is from the Cambridge Dictionary Online. So it seems that this little speaker as a symbol has established itself quite well. Almost all the dictionary use this. We have it to show how the word is pronounced. In the context, we give little citations from a corpus of spoken language. And then, of course, you have illustrations. They are quite common. This is a screenshot from the Algemeen Nederlands Woordenboek, again, where you have, this is the word apple. You have little pictures, if possible, right next to the definition. You can have illustrations also in little pop-up windows. This is our entry for cathedral. There's lots of going on here. There's not many illustrations, really. But when there are, you will find lots of different ways of showing them online. I think there is also nothing has really established itself. There's more experimental stuff going on. How should we put illustrations online? And then there's also videos. And most of the videos I know are in dictionaries of sign language, but there you need them. This is the entry for to write in a German dictionary of sign language, and of course you see a little video with the correct movement. And other dictionaries online use videos in their outer features. Let's say we have a look at that later. I know that offering multimedia is expensive. We know from our own experience to have pictures is expensive. But I think in this respect, most internet dictionaries I know are still very much away from truly using the possibilities the web would offer to them. Let's look at the outer texts now, very shortly, because probably you say, oh, nobody cares about them anyway. No user ever looks at them, so why should we care about them? But I think it's quite interesting to see what happens on the internet in this respect. There are very many dictionaries offering a help menu. This is from a Spanish dictionary of verbal suffixes, a very specialized dictionary, and here you have a whole help menu. This is a very widely spread way of doing it, or you can have these little information buttons that you click on, and then in little pop-up windows you get information here on orthography, for example. But you also have very many other things. In printed dictionaries, you'll have lots of stuff like lists of irregular verbs. You'll have lists of geographical names. and so on, if you think about the printed dictionaries that you know. And internet dictionaries have come up with a whole new bunch of things that they offer. For example, something on words of the day. This is from the Cambridge site online. Or I just love Merriam-Webster's little videos, Ask the Editor, where you sometimes have information on words, but sometimes they'll explain to you how to use the dictionary. So these are actually outer videos, or I don't know. I think there's room for research here. I think the word outer text doesn't work anymore. Outer features is maybe more appropriate. I don't know any work done on a systematic collection of all the outer features or how they actually work together with the dictionary content offered, especially for publishing houses. I think that most of the sites, when you see in your inner eye, you now visualize Merriam-Webster's site, for example, there's a whole lot going on around the dictionary content, and it would be interesting to see how this works together with the content. Let's look at visualizations. We have seen a very interesting way of doing this for encyclopedic information yesterday, but I think that there is more. Very common are clouds now. This is taken from the DWDS. Clouds are used to show the different statistical association between a head word and its collocates. I'm sure you've seen comparable things already. And then there are lots of graphs you'll find online. Graphs are used, for example, to illustrate paradigmatic relations. This is taken from Visual Words, which is a whole visual dictionary showing only this kind of relation. They can also be used to show word families. This is taken from Kanunet, which is a German online dictionary. This is the word Brezel, and then all the derivatives and compounds. And since German is a very active language in compounding, you'll have large graphs here. And I had a hard time to find a small one to put on the screen, really. So I came up with Brezel. And this is taken from an Italian dictionary where graphs are used to visualize concepts. This is a tree that builds up when you type in the word diccionario. So there's a whole lot going on here, but what we do not know, I think personally, is whether our users really understand and correctly interpret this kind of information, and in which situation of using the dictionary would they do so. I think what we need probably to do is to teach users how to use this, or why we put it online, because people out there are still used to having information on words in words and not in pictures, so to say. But maybe that'll change in the future. So far, I've mentioned several times that I would like to know more about how users work with this, what they really need. And so I'll look at some of the ways that we use dictionaries, what ways of access we offer to dictionary users, and how we interact with them. So these will be my two topics. I can't cover usage studies here, but I know that there are several papers here at the conference, so maybe it's not too bad that I don't tell anything about that. How do we offer access to users? Well, we've seen the lemma list thing, which is where I'm not sure about whether this is useful. But we've seen simple search boxes, but there are more sophisticated ways of doing this. And of course, the most important of those would be to offer onomasiological access to the data. And again, I'd like to show the Algemeen Nederlands Woordenboek, because they offer both. You can go from word to meaning or from meaning to word. And they have put so much effort into doing this, developing the necessary information that is in the background, that it would be so useful or interesting to know whether people really actually use this way of accessing the data and how often they do this and in which kind of situations they do that. But there are other internet dictionaries that offer access to the entries via more onomasiological way. This is taken from a French, Kosovo-Albanian bilingual dictionary where you enter the dictionary through choosing a domain. You have to look at, you can either say, okay, I like some words about eating or clothing, or I need to question somebody, and then you'll find the appropriate vocabulary when you go through these There is no other way of entering this dictionary, interestingly enough. And of course, you could use pictures to give access to entries, and this is from Merriam-Webster's Visual Dictionary Online, which is also an onomasiological way to do it. It's very rarely done, though. It's expensive to have graphics like that. There are of course, other ways of giving access to data. Yesterday, for example, there was a talk about graph-based searches of one of my colleagues here. And then, of course, internet dictionaries have come up with lots of lists that I think are there to make people go into the dictionary. Let's look at some examples. Very often you'll find something like recently published. This is from OED. You'll have the most frequently looked up words on this side. This is Merriam-Webster's. And then for German, very typically from Duden.de, difficult spelling words difficult to spell, very important for Germans. These are the latest neologisms in our neologism dictionary. Or we have a list of all the illustrated entries. And these are just 5 examples. There are very many different lists in internet dictionaries. And I don't know anybody who has collected what there is or who has looked into why we do this. I think it's to intense users to go into the dictionary. It's probably sort of advertising what else there is. You don't want to leave the user to leave the site, but you want him or her to stay and look at some more words. I guess that's why we have it. What we don't have yet, Google is working on it. I learned yesterday's speech recognition that people can say what they want to look up. What we also don't offer are XPath queries, which would be possible when you have an XML structure. You could offer this to expert users so that they can use all the data. But I think it's not done because it creates too much traffic of data. What do we do to stay in contact with our users? Lots of things, and I know there are talks today about this too. Very many ways of staying in contact. Dictionaries giving feedback forms where you can suggest new word entries, for example. You have blogs, newsletters, Twitter news, whatever. This is from Oxford Word Blogs. You can ask the editor if you have specific questions. This is from Canunet. Or you can comment on the entries that somebody has given. This is from Ordbook.com, another Danish, mostly bilingual dictionary. You have little comments here. And there is more. In fact, I think there's a whole lot changing here. We want, actually, it seems as if dictionaries want their users to interact with them. But that does have effects, of course. And I think you really have to plan how to deal with the input you get, or you have to plan who's writing all those interesting blogs, for example, and tweets. And for example, when Duden went online, before they went online, they had this little survey and they asked users whether they'd like to be able to give feedback. And almost 50%, this is the green portion here, said yes, we'd like to be able to give feedback to the dictionary. And over 25% said yes, we'd like to write on the dictionary. Yeah? So the Duden people knew what was coming, yeah? Lots of input. So they had to plan how to deal with it. And then one of the editors now is responsible to look through all the mails. And as a rule, they answer to every mail coming in on the same day and give some kind of feedback. And it takes up a lot of time. But I think that all the feedback that you get from blogs and so on can be used by the editorial staff as an impetus to make some corrections, for example, or adjustments, or to plan further developments of the dictionary. I think it's quite useful, even if it creates more work. I think it's worth the trouble because you'll be able to create user-friendly dictionaries this way. Hope. Okay, let's summarize a little bit. First, let me stress some points, which are important in my opinion. I think that internet lexicography is not just a continuation of print lexicography. I think it's an independent discipline, and this is why. There are new contents. You've seen some in other talks here. I've shown some to you, and this information is hopefully highly and consistently cross-linked. It is only partly compiled lexicographically, but also automatically. And we can show the content to users in very different ways and with multimedia elements. And then, of course, producing the dictionary is different too. You need more than just lexicographers to work on internet dictionaries. You need, for example, web designers. You need corpus and computer linguists. And out of my own experience, I would say it's very useful to have a team comprising all those right from the beginning. But internet dictionaries can also be written by users or in teams of lexicographers and users. And this, of course, also influences the lexicographical process substantially. And our users are more visible than dictionary users, I think, were ever before. We even invite them to give feedback or to help to write the dictionary. We can monitor users more closely, for example, by analyzing log files. And we offer quite a lot of new ways to them to find information in the dictionary. And this is why I think that it is necessary for researchers on lexicography to develop new means of analyzing and describing internet dictionaries. For example, it's a challenge to introduce new terminology for all those new features that internet dictionaries come up with. I think there is more to be done, to be honest, and this is what I'd like to be done or to be discussed. I think it's absolutely necessary to discuss the quality of internet dictionaries. And to be more specific, we need to find answers to questions like how can we define quality in this context? Which criteria for good quality are there? And how can we assess the quality of user-generated content? How can we evaluate the usability of internet dictionaries, and so forth? In my opinion, it's necessary to have more feedback between the practical experience of dictionary makers here on the one hand and dictionary researchers on the other hand. But it is also to be wished that new dictionary projects try to take into account what research really has to offer them. Sometimes I feel that there is not enough contact between those who work on it practically and those who work on it theoretically. And very important seems to me to be the training of future users so that we won't lose them. I think we need to teach students why it is still useful to look into a dictionary for information on words. But we also need to train future lexicographers. I think they still need to get a thorough philological training, but they need also to be instructed on all the more technical aspects of internet lexicography, hopefully. And last but not least, maybe we should engage in lobbying activities to secure the financial security of internet lexicography, both in academic institutions as well as in publishing houses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annette. We have plenty of time for questions. Yes, Adam.
Relates to your very nice talk, but your request for more research at various points. I mean, I think there's often a really easy answer to that you've got the logs. If you want to know if if the lemma list is useful, just see how often people click it. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, but would we know by looking at the log files why people clicked there? Maybe somebody just clicked in there to see what happens. We don't know if people will use this feature in the future when they go back. But it can give you some information, but I don't think information or answers to all the questions I'd like to have answered.
I mean, there's usually another method is to have half the entries with a try missing out something, try a variant for some subset of the entries, and then you can compare compare how much usage you get in the one case with how much usage you get in the other case, or something like that. So I can't help thinking that the only way to go ahead with it is thinking of ways of answering all your research questions via the log results.
For example, but when you think about the position where the lemma list should be, you should probably also use other methods of investigating. When you think of the Duden site, which presented the lemma list at the bottom, I think the log files won't really tell you whether people actually scroll down and look at it. You maybe need, what are these things called where you, help me, eye tracking studies to see whether they really find where the lemma list is and things like that. So I think some questions, yes, log file analysis could be used, but not everything. Yeah.
Yes, you have it.
Yes, I like very much your survey, but I missed one thing there. Most of your examples were in German, English, and Danish, yes? What is the situation in other European languages, let alone the Asian languages? I think there is a lot of work in Asia done in electronic lexicography.
That's what I said right in the beginning, that I'll cover mostly German and European dictionaries because I know them best. That doesn't mean that there isn't anything else out there. And I hope to show, I had other languages, it's just, there are so many, just look into that online bibliography, you just have to choose. I'm sorry if somebody missed a very important Asian dictionary or anything. It's just there is so much out there.
Thank you.
Tatiana from Latvia, Tilda. I've got a short note before my question about eye tracking. It's a modern technique which helps to understand even about the design of the web form. For example, this certain lemma list, is it put to the left or to the right? Or even OK button, is it put to the left or to the right? And this eye tracking is very helpful here. And my question was about your slide with the graphic rate versus ranking. Could you please find it? And there was no context. There was no context in this. Are these the result of your user needs or something like that?
Yes, we had an online survey, and this is just one of the graphs that we produced with the results. But when we asked the questions, we actually set them. We said, if you use a dictionary in this situation, and this is your task, then how would you rate this kind of information?
So you proposed them answers rather than they proposed what they are.
Yes, they had a list of to choose from, and then they had to rank all the information.
Okay. Since we have conducted the survey about the specialized lexicography dictionaries, and the context was top 2 requirement. Yeah, it was interesting. And the grammar information in its turn was quite to the bottom. And in your in your diagram, I can see that the grammar information is very important, and maybe this is because of the general lexicography, and that's why it's very interesting to see the differences between specialized and general lexicography.
The dictionary that we introduced was a general monolingual dictionary, not a bilingual, or so. Yes,
yeah,
of course there might be differences there.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Very interesting talk.
There's a lady.
And of course, you have never to forget that German, I mean, we mostly had German people in the survey, and they tend to think that orthography and grammar is important.
Yes, I found your talk really inspirational and very interesting, so thank you for that. We have in Norway a couple of dictionaries that have been as it were, recognized for school use, so that all schools pupils, especially in secondary schools, are encouraged to have these dictionaries on the web while they're working in their lessons, while the teaching is going on. And we found, when this website was redesigned and launched in 2009, that we started getting completely new types of queries, which had very little to do with what's been mentioned here. But for instance, I think the baseline is that people want to get results at once. And this affects, for instance, requests that we change the order of homographs so that the most frequent homograph comes top. no matter, you know, what linguistic ordering there might be behind it. And they want the most frequent usages, definitions on top, no matter what sort of logic there might be in the entry itself. And it's a real challenge to combine, what shall I say, the professional pride of the linguist lexicographer with the needs of the public. And so, of course, one would like to have some sort of system by which the most frequently sought information, as it were, put itself on top of the hit list without actually having to rearrange the entry, for instance. And if we are requested to change the ordering of home graphs, we just do it. But apart from that, I think the most frequent questions we get is, why is this, that, or the other word missing? And it may be a perfectly, you know, transparent compound. Norwegian, like German, is a compounding language, but still people want to see it. They want the recognition of it in the dictionary. Or they may miss a meaning, or they may have misunderstood something. But I find that what really, really matters is that they get a personal response at once. And I have to say we prioritize the teachers, because they are the ones, you know, who have 30 to, well, God knows how many obstreperous students in their classroom. And if we can make their lives easier, then we want to do it. Yeah.
You're already doing what I was asking for, train the future users. If in Germany, there's no rule like that. Teachers of German don't have to use dictionaries in their classes. I've never heard about that. Neither paper dictionaries nor internet dictionaries, except the Duden orthographic dictionary, which is used for correcting, but that's about it.
It's just a comment on evaluation of using the online resources. So I can say that we are using Google Analytics for analyzing the logs from how users use the online resources. And it's a day-to-day follow up on what Google Analytics says, and I can compare it as a tool like a corpus for analyzing text. If you want to analyze how users behave and how they use your resource, I can clearly recommend to use Google Analytics for analyzing it. And it's not something that is not going on. It's a day-to-day business for online dictionaries to do this. And the other thing is that I think it's when you talk about how users access the information, it's also important to realize that if you look at online dictionaries, at least in our experience, about 40% of the traffic to the online resource, it comes from search engines. So they don't go to the home page of the dictionary. They go to a particular dictionary entry page. And it has a big consequence on how you organize the content in the dictionary, online dictionary, because any page is a home page.
Well, thank you. We don't do this for our dictionary because we don't want to open up to Google Analytics. Is that right, Caroline? Hmm?
I just want to say we observe the log files for Ovid, so we log it by ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any more?
But how would you find out how these outer features that you have really interact with the dictionary content via log files or Google Analytics? This is a question that has been asked about outer text for printed dictionaries too. There should be interlinked, for example. I don't know how to find this out except by somebody doing research with specific dictionaries, for example. Log files is not always an answer, I would say. For example, eye tracking is fascinating, but it's very expensive to do. Yeah. Can't do that all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks very much, Annette. A really super survey. Just another observation, really, following up what Holger said. The other very clear trend that we're seeing, and I'm sure everyone else is that people are accessing online dictionaries from mobile devices. And that trend is definitely going to continue, and it has huge implications for how you design things. If you're looking at something on a tablet, then it's not that different from a desktop, but a phone is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
And,
from the German Academy projects, only the DWDS has met that challenge yet. They have developed an app for smartphones, which is online in a beta version. You can already use that. And the panels that you see distributed horizontally on big screens then sort of are arranged vertically and a lot smaller, and there's not so much collapsible things going on. So they worked on that. We haven't done so yet. And there is a Duden app out there now, which is an even more reduced way of presenting the data that you have to buy, of course. But these very specialized dictionaries, some of those that I've shown, I don't think that they'll ever develop. Something for smaller screens, I don't know. We should probably work on that. But then, on the other hand, in which context would somebody want to look something up on German wine terminology or historical Germanic legal terms on his smartphone? I'm just, maybe. A what? A what? What are you saying? Everybody's giving an answer and I don't understand. Aha, okay. I think the wine terminology in there is more about the plants and the growing of wine and the, all the technical things that you do, and not the words that describe the wine. I'm not sure.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on this about user profiling. If you look at what Google is doing and many of the other apps on mobile platforms, it's quite clear that they use a login via Facebook. And it's quite clear that they can collect an awful lot of information about the end user. They don't do it 1 day or 2 days or when the user do something specifically, but they do it all the time. They collect everything you do. So Google now can figure out, okay, now you have 23 minutes to work because it thought that your work was in this spot and you are now at home. So, I mean, we have an intelligence going on these mobile devices all the time, whether we like it or not. And the question is, can we utilize this in our dictionaries? And if we can, I mean, how are we going to do it? Where is the limit? And if we think about adjusting the presentation of an entry to what we know about the end user, well, if we know that the end user is working in the oil industry, is sitting at the office, because it's in the office hour, the address is correct, how would we adjust the presentation of an entry to those facts? Opposite to now he is at home playing with his children, which he picked up in the children's garden 5 minutes ago. Can we do that? Does it make sense? I mean, that's maybe some of the things that we have to look into in the near future.
Can I give this to the floor? This is, how could I possibly answer this? I mean, first of all, I think it's a scary picture. I personally wouldn't want to be known so well to Google, so that's why I don't use my smartphone that way, but yes, might be a development for the future too. If we can get hold of this data that Google collects, we might use it if we really want to. I'm not sure. But if there's anybody else who has an opinion on this, I mean, I'm not the only one working on internet dictionaries here. So.
Well, I should say that we will discuss many of these topics during the round table as well. So I think we have the discussion nicely, sort of a nice warm-up now. And if there are no more questions, I would conclude this because we're a bit we're behind the schedule. Any more questions? We have time for one last question. Okay, so we'll continue this in the evening. Thank you very much, Annette.